Students have the toughest time with this part of lists and recursion, and I'm sure I warned you. But I'm trying to give you a couple of examples, and we'll go from there. If I'm asking you to create a recursive function, there's a couple of things to look out for. Number one, I've tried to give you plenty of examples, but I'm going to give you two more just to see the overall construction is actually pretty similar in each case. First, you need to think about how you would construct whatever you need it bit by bit, because this is going to be recursively going through the list. So what would you want in your overall objective that you know is going to be in pieces, that you're adding pieces or deleting pieces, or something that it's literally an element by element step, because again it is recursion. Now you need to identify two cases, and here I'm showing you the example that we have for number one, and I'm going to go over the example here in a little bit. But first, identify a null case, and it's usually what you want it to return right afterwards. Like in this example for length, all I'm doing is returning the number of elements within the list. There's my null case, and notice it's with a question mark. There's the list I'm passing in, and what do I want to do if it is null? Now in this case, because I'm returning the list of elements, I'm going to return 0. Now you're thinking, well, what happens if the list is 1? That's where the next part comes into. So we go to the else case, and notice I say number 1 because there could be other cases or else's because of whatever application that you have. And this is what do you want it to do to return a partially called construction while determining the rest of the list. What do I mean by that? Here's the construction, meaning how am I getting the data out of it if it is not equal to null? So that means there's two parts. First part is what am I returning eventually? That is normally the last end of the overall portion of the else. In this case, it's length, and I'm giving it the rest of the list. So notice I'm always recalling or recursively calling the same function. That's got to be there. The next part usually is I'm returning the rest of the list because, frankly, I've already looked at it. I know it's not null at my current location, and that's why I'm returning +1. But I'm not done yet. With that plus, remember, I need two portions of this. I've got one done, and that one determines the element that we're currently at. But then I got to go deeper and say, okay, length, let's go ahead and check out the rest of you. And as long as it's not an element, it keeps adding 1 and 1 and 1. So notice that is the construction portion and the return portion of that particular element that we're currently looking at. So let's look at our example number 1. In example number 1, which is the same length function, notice I drew out the call stack, the value return, and I did the condition on this one as well because I want to make sure that you understand we're always checking the condition, and depending on that condition is going to be when we actually end this sucker. In your design, you need to have this. A lot of you just try to go straight to the code. I get you. That's the way we are. At least now I can give you a little bit more of what the code will look like, but you still need to figure out this portion of this. So notice I'm actually going to start, things are going to start disappearing here, but our original call is the length and with the list of 1, 2, 3, and 4. So first we're going to check to see if the length is passed in. We're going to check to see if the list is null, which it is not. So I'm going to go ahead and call +1 and then the rest of the next call, which again, that means I got to wait. I don't have a solution for this. So I have to wait and call this time the length of 2, 3, and 4. And that is using the cooter to get the rest of the list. Notice that this will continue to go all the way up until, frankly, we get to the end. Now here's the beautiful part. Remember, if we're adding something, 0 doesn't hurt anything. If we're I mean, you're going to have to figure out solutions where at the end, you just don't do anything or you return a 0 or something of that nature. That's going to be your toughest part of your construction. But once length has nothing in it, then that condition of null with a question mark is going to say, hey, I am null. So let me return 0. So in this whole thing on the way down, you're going to see things starting to get crossed off here, is that it's going to be 0 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 and plus 1. Notice I said 4 plus 1s because that's the exact count. And that gives us our 4. But notice it really took us 5 steps because we had to wait for the null. And number 2, whatever that null case didn't hurt us. And each time we had to do it by one element at a time. These are all things you need to think about when you're designing or constructing your function.